three main steps, if you will, or mile markers, is around your cloud readiness and what you need to do from a cloud readiness perspective, client communications, and redesigning the user experience. So let's break that down in a little bit more detail. So from a cloud readiness perspective, maybe Terry, I'll send this one over to you. From your point of view, what should firms undertake to ensure that they're prepared to move their DM environments to the cloud?
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. And David's already touched on some of this in the context of only moving to the cloud what we really need and want to to move, and taking the opportunity to winnow down our collection, reduce the storage footprint, if you will, of data that we have on-prem in an on-prem system before we move it to the cloud. It will take several weeks, maybe a few months to move data, depending on the volume of data and the number of terabytes that we're pushing to the cloud. So if we can take the opportunity to reduce that footprint and reduce the volume of data on-prem, that's a good thing. I've been surprised, I'm still surprised to hear that many law firms who say they have information management policies and retention schedules and do destroy records, more often than not, they're destroying and more proactively destroying their physical files, but not so much the DMS content. And so while matters may have been eligible for destruction, they haven't necessarily destroyed the electronic content. So it's a great opportunity to do that before we move to the cloud. Another key example is for firms that have had or have not had a policy over purging data related to departed employees, including lawyers, potentially doing some of that purging before we take the material to the cloud. So the idea here is just generally understanding the volume of our data, understanding the sources of those data, and understanding the age of that data, so that we can ideally dispose of it in a defensible way while the solution is still on-prem, so that we end up having a smaller footprint once we go to the cloud. David, anything else that comes to your mind?
No, I would agree. I mean, again, I think a key partner in that effort, if it's something you're not comfortable with, whether that's on the information governance side or the app development side, plenty of outreach to your practice groups. If you have an old version of iManage with an outdated interface that hasn't been touched over time, I think this is a really key opportunity, in line with those information governance efforts, to restructure how the application is laid out. I think many will shift from a fairly complex approach to how data goes in and out of iManage in an old environment versus a new, more modern, streamlined approach to that. So that's
for our participants that may already be in the cloud, but perhaps didn't undertake the processes that you're talking about to reduce the footprint. Is it too late? And what would that look like if they were to stop now or start now?
Yeah. I mean, it's never too late to improve your information governance posture, really. I mean, it is, the idea here is to try to do some of that or as much of that as we can before we go to the cloud. But if we have already got more data that was potentially already eligible for destruction and we didn't destroy it, we can certainly be proactive about defensively getting rid of it while it's on-prem. So I think it's just important to minimize the amount of data. And I'll say that, there's certainly been a huge increase in data breaches that are happening to a lot of firms, and you can't almost pick up a paper these days and not find out somebody's been hacked. And so the idea is the less we store, the less data we have that's potentially exposed in those environments. So that's another advantage, whether it's in your solutions or whether it is stored in the cloud in an Azure-based solution. Those are some key things that firms should consider.
Yeah. Much of the information that is stored too doesn't really have there's not really a clear policy on what you should keep for how long. So it's a business decision. So a lot of times the best practices about retention are more important than the actual laws that govern the information. So coming up with a partner, interviewing other firms to know what those best practices are is really important as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those are two great points. I think on just the straight information governance point. So some firms are all over it, some firms are not. I think it's a huge topic in our industry right now. Still quite a few that haven't managed to get their arms around it. If a firm's experienced a breach, it goes right to the top of the list. It's not a security fix, but it does narrow the target, so to speak. It can also contribute to factors that will add more elements of zero trust to how you manage your data, who can see what, how many layers you're going to put in place, which is quite contradictory to the law firm model early days, which is open and sharing, because we're lawyers and we're all bound by the same ethical obligations. But as we know, that doesn't put barriers in place for threat actors. So it can have quite a powerful effect across your security posture. But if you don't have a top-down approach to that, if you don't have a managing partner or a tech committee or both that are supporting that initiative, it can go nowhere fast. So I've seen the most effective change take place with the top-down approach, supporting that policy. Clearly outlines practice-related data versus, let's say, other data, and the treatment of that. And then this also contributes quite positively to the cloud migration. So if we're talking about data storage costs, what's going to help that project in terms of timing and the data you have to transfer, as well as the costs of the storage of that data or indexing of that data? It's going to be information governance. And then you get to a cloud platform. That's where the innovation is taking place around email management or the garbage that we don't want to see enter the platform going forward.
In terms of communicating to the client, because often what we hear from our clients and potential clients who are contemplating a move of their DM environment to the cloud, concerns arise around getting clients on board and ensuring that clients are comfortable with that. David, what's been your experience and relative to socializing this with your clients and what that process looks like?
Well, many of them have asked for it, and it's sitting there silently in our outside counsel guidelines. So, your general counsel's engagement in that piece as well is critical. And then I think it's more about the practice engagement, because you need the practice to follow through on that or agree on how you're going to approach it so you can actually destroy data, right? I think many clients would cheer the fact that we're doing it, but I think there is a general client sweet spot where you can say 10 years, let's say, for retention, notwithstanding the fact that other practice groups might need to keep data longer for like private client or intellectual property. So there are always going to be those exceptions, and then there will be practice groups that have concerns around how they maintain knowledge, which should be something that you can easily reduce concerns about. But generally, I think when we talk about building client trust, the fact that a firm even considers following through on this and engaging their client, I think they receive that as very positive. And that is, this is a part of a larger shift towards building that confidence around security, data management, and I think how we engage them around, managing their data and the risks associated with that. So it's all positive.
I think David just touched on a really good point, though, too, and that is that oftentimes it will be stated either implicitly or explicitly in the outside counsel guidelines or in some other commitment document the firm has with the client. So just having a good understanding of which clients have specifically expressed a desire, a need, a restriction, whatever it may be, to work through that list and then go have conversations with those clients one-off. I mean, it was fairly common 5-7 years ago for clients to tell their law firms, you can't store our data in the cloud. I think in 2024, that's much less of a case. And I think anybody, if they're given a reasonable explanation for how they will benefit, how the firm will benefit by storing their clients' data in this environment, everyone's going to be in a better off situation. So anyway, I think that's a good notion. And I generally agree with what David was saying.
Any lessons learned, David, around just the logistics of that process? How did you communicate with them? Is it meetings? Is it written consent, FAQs? Just what did that process look like for those who are about to or potentially embarking on that
I
process?
think most of it's coming from the security audit process. And then the rest of it's coming in the forms of requests. So, you know, we have many clients that approach us on the deletion of their data, generally 10 years or older for closed matters. We see banks sending us requests, you know, all the time. So really it's just us proving to them that we've taken care of it or answering the requests. But in the audit process, in the outside counsel guideline process, you know, these are things that we want to follow through on demonstrably to build their trust. Like it's really coming, I'd say it's coming from them. You know, we don't have to engage them, they're engaging us on that topic. And it's becoming a bigger audit point. You know, it wasn't necessarily an enforced audit point before, and now that's changing.
Let's talk about the opportunities that moving DM to the cloud would present relative to the user experience. I
mean, generally, when you have a significant shift or change in an application interface, that's an opportunity for you to engage your business. So, you know, going on a bit of a road show, reaching out to practice group leaders, you know, taking all of their feedback in line with what you know is going to change. I mean, so change management is always critical for anything, particularly a core business application. So, you know, if you want that to go well, I even think sometimes, you know, you have to engage the vendor as well. So iManage, for example, are very, you know, open and engaged when you want to talk about their product, and not just with regards to what we know. They provide a lot of information around roadmap. And they do a lot of outreach around feedback from our industry. And I think, you know, I think that's an important part of your choice as well. Like, so who are you partnering with on, let's say, the, you know, the contractor side, like Harbor, and similarly, you know, part of the decision is who is the business and the application of choice, and how do they engage you? You know, like in legal, we love the term, we like a right-sized engagement. And I think that translates basically into someone that's just sensitive to how we work, and understanding of that is going to be there through thick and thin, pre and post deployment.
Just to piggyback on that, when you're talking about users bringing things to you as well, Dave, you alluded to this earlier, that not just iManage, but all vendors are kind of rolling out their new enhancements only in their cloud versions. And that's true with iManage, of course, as well. You know, clients that they really need to be on the cloud.imanage endpoint if they want to benefit from new features. And that includes AI and near AI features as well. And so any conversation you're having with users or around cloud readiness or AI in general, you almost have to consider that as a prerequisite, that we have to be into the cloud.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's part of the sell to the business as well. You know, talking about this fundamental shift and what it means in terms of what they're used to and what we're going to be forced to do. I mean, tech is about speed, right? AI is about things speeding up. So I think there is a message around the business's responsibility in all of this. I think typically they like to push to us, and then we make our shift, and then they like to complain. So I think, you know, it's important to enlist your business as a partner and explain to them what you need. You know, whether it's at the practice group leadership level, business leadership level, you know, things are changing. Like security drives that message all the time, right? It can't be just about IT. You know, we need people to take a responsibility for how they approach these changes and challenges. And, you know, it's not an easy sell necessarily, but, you know, I think it's something that you have to be repetitive about and emphasize because, you know, things are speeding up. We know lawyers don't like change. So getting them comfortable with change, you know, that can be from building confidence around how you manage that change, but also, you know, helping them understand that, you know, we can't always ensure that the new application is going to look like the old application. You know, and having good feedback from other people or partners around that experience. How it's going to be similar no matter what application you deploy. Part of that is just accepting it, right? And once we're there, let's say, let's say the whole industry makes a shift to the cloud, the vendors are going to be driving that change. We're going to have less and less of an ability to slow that down, right? So,
Right.
like your iPhone and your app, your Apple apps, these things get updated, they change, and sometimes it causes problems. It doesn't mean everything's going to go away, but there's also a stabilizing effect to that transition as well. So I think we can build confidence that way. Metrically, from an operations perspective, I've seen a great stabilization around technology. Doesn't mean that Office 365 can't go down. It's important that you lead with that message, but at the same time, we're not rushing to make critical security updates. It's not breaking things. It's, so there are some benefits to that shift.
And I like how you said earlier that knowledge has an important role to play in this type of initiative as well, in interacting with the users and understanding what's important to them and how it's organized and how to be able to get to it in a way that supports them, and using the technology as an enabler.
Yeah.
Kevin, you just got back from the iManage Global Partner briefing. Any scoop you can share with the folks who are tuning in?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Well, iManage reported that cloud migrations continue to be rapid, and we talked about why that is. They want to, benefit from all the new features that are only being rolled out in the cloud, including the AI discussion. So at the partner briefing, AI dominated the new feature discussions. It was everywhere in every conversation we were having up there. And although I think firms are buying into the cloud, iManage clients, well over half are already converted to the cloud. The AI story is still immature. Use cases are evolving at this point. Not everybody knows what they're going to do with AI, but everybody's talking about it. And what seems most compelling, at least in our discussions and what I heard at the partner briefing, were around attorneys' desire to utilize AI to become more efficient. And that's particularly true around menial tasks. So how do they speed those things up? And what stood out to me is iManage seems to have answers for several of those types of tasks. And it's especially true since the information they're using every day, staff's using every day, already lives inside of iManage. That's right at their fingertips. I don't think the forum's necessarily a avenue to get into the feature discussion necessarily, but there are a few things that stood out that I think it's important to talk about. First, there's a lot of enhancements coming around how documents are automatically classified. So making the retrieval of information. We talked about search, but this is, not just searching, but retrieving information. How do you make that a better experience for the end users? It's pulling the metadata, automatically applying metadata information based on the content of a document. So there's a lot of AI thought that's brought into this to really enhance it. Secondly, the notion of a mailbox assistant isn't necessarily new, something that helps an attorney or helps a staff member file an email or file a document, but really driving AI into that mix to really make it more accurate and a lot faster for the end users. It's always a challenge to get an attorney to file things correctly or at all. So there's certainly some AI features that are going to be driving that conversation as well. Third is the notion of knowledge management. We talked about KM a moment ago, but how do we make information that we file easily accessible to other users that want to benefit from it later? So there's definitely some improvements there as well. And then finally, I think something that when I think of AI, I think of this type of use, a feature called Ask iManage, which really provides some pragmatic offerings around the concept of contextual search. So what used to take a significant amount of time now just takes moments on how you search information, how you extract things, and how you can ask more contextual type questions and let the AI engine do its work. And of course, these are all governed by security policies and ethical walls and things like that that really kind of put guardrails around information. So when you're out there having AI conversations, these are things that you can bring to the table. David, you talked about attorneys ask for things and you incorporate them and they complain about it. But these are things you can bring to the table around AI discussions, or if you're hearing these things from other users, these are things that are coming from iManage that really stood out at the briefing.